Congressman,
Mr.
yes,
Chair,
Congressman Suarez.
point of clarification lang. Earlier, my fellow colleague from Cavite mentioned that in the arbitration, it wasn't ABS CBN that paid government. It was government that paid. It was government that paid ABS CBN. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, please.
In the line of questioning earlier, correct me if I'm wrong. It was government. It wasn't government that paid ABS CBN. It was ABS CBN that It was ABS CBN who received payment from government. Correct.
That is correct because we claimed for rentals and at the same time, instead po na yung gobyerno po magbayad ay in-apply na lang po doon sa 3 elements na po yun.
No. Yung point of clarification ko doon, Mr. Chair, if we can also ask for the same documents. Does this principle also apply to all the other companies that were sequestered during the martial law era?
ABS CBN, alam niyo po ba yung sagot dyan?
Other corporations po, hindi po. Hindi ko po, I'm not, I do not have personal knowledge of that po.
If so, Mr. Chair, maybe we can ask our committee to find out. Kasi kung ito po talaga yung naging general course of action during that time, especially we're going back in history and we also need to find out how government worked with the other companies during post-martial law period. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kung hindi po ako nagkakamali, kasama natin ngayong araw na to ang PCGG. Alam kaya nila yung ano? Yun nangyari dyan. Before I recognize PCGG,
Mr. Chairman, I just have a short question.
yes, Congressman Remulla.
Since the witness is not competent to testify on other matters, maybe he's competent to testify on this written statement that he read earlier in the beginning of this hearing. Mr. Chairman,
Congressman, Vice Chairman Remulla, maraming tanong ba yan?
it's only, actually, there's just 2 provisions in the letter na magkasunod, no? Ang sabi niya sa line 4 or a 3rd paragraph, a lease agreement was entered into between RPN 9 and ABS CBN, and thus ownership was retained by ABS CBN. So, do you admit that there was the actual lease agreement between RPN 9 and ABS CBN?
ABS CBN?
Totoo po yun, mayroon pong dokumento dyan. Ngunit po, hindi po nakabayad dyan dahil nga po sa sulat or sa lease letter agreement, dapat po talaga pag-uusapan na yung lease, yung compensation po. Ngunit,
hindi, kasi ano dito in your letter, sabi, very clear a letter lease agreement was signed between ABS-CBN and Radio Philippines Network, and on the end, sabi mo, ownership was retained by ABS-CBN. So this is your statement, di ba? In the next paragraph, you said, ABS-CBN was deprived of the right to use the facilities from the declaration of martial law and even after the EDSA revolution. How can it be a deprivation of right when there was already a lease agreement? Can you distinguish between the 2 paragraphs that you wrote and read to this body?
ABS CBN?
Your Honors, ito po ay agreement nga, kaya lang hindi naman po nagbayad during the martial law years. Kaya nga po yung,
Were you there to say that hindi nagbayad? Or by what authority are you saying hindi nagbayad? Because you're going to testify on something that you were not present in. Unless you have the original document with you and a receipt for 1 peso.
ito po ay nalalaman po doon sa affidavit ni Attorney Augusto Almeida Lopez po na sinubmit na rin po namin sa komitiba. Kanya nga po, in fact, they said the provisions of this lease letter agreement were quoted in toto in the ombudsman case po.
Who signed the lease agreement?
This lease letter agreement was signed by Alfredo Montelibano as chairman of ABS CBN, and illegible po, hindi ko po ito alam kung kaninong pirma po ito, with the conformity of Radio Philippines Network po. Nandyan po na yan na sinubmit na sa komitiba po.
So after all of these years, you are contesting that there was a lease agreement, although you are the one who introduced the concept that there was a lease agreement.
There was a lease agreement po. Kaya lang po hindi nagbayad kasi nga po hindi na pag-usapan kung magkano talaga ang
Mr.
dapat
Chairman, ang problema
mabayaran.
kasi dito, it's hearsay. Yung hindi nagbayad is not personal knowledge. So, he's not competent to even state what he wrote in his introduction to this committee, Mr. Chairman. We have a problem here.
Congressman Remulla, I'm allowing you to continue your interpellation, and I already timed you. Hindi ko na po ipabibigay sa iyo yung oras mo mamaya. Idiretso mo na po yung
Mr. Chairman,
interpellation mo.
in the matter of giving time, I think that it's just about fair that we are able to discuss all the issues here so people can understand what we're talking about. I mean, sometimes you miss the forest for the trees. Time is important, but in regard to the understanding of people, I don't think that that is the most important aspect of why we are here to discuss ABS CBN. Sana ho, wag tayo magsasabi na ito binigay yung time, ito binigay yung time. Hindi po ito, Mr. Chairman eh. Hindi po malinaw kung talaga ba gusto natin tapusin ito o gusto natin i-time lang ng pagsasalita ng isang tao.
Congressman Remulla, malinaw naman po na gusto nating ituloy itong proceedings natin. At sinabi ko lang po sa inyo na yung oras na ibibigay nyo dapat kay Congressman Marcoleta ay gamitin nyo na po dahil maganda po yung punto ninyo patungkol sa ABS-CBN, at ayoko namang putulin kaagad yung napakagandang punto po na iniraise mo na sa committee ito. Ituloy mo po ang pagtatanong mo, Congressman Remulla, para sa mas maintindihan po, para mas lalong maintindihan ng ating mga kababayan ang patungkol po doon sa iyong pagtatanong.
So, Mr. Rendor, was there a lease contract executed or was there not a lease contract executed?
Meron po through a letter, although po dun sa lease, sa letter po, hindi na pag-usapan po kung magkano po talaga ang renta. Ito po ay yung, kung mamarapatin niyo pong masagot ko, ipagpatuloy ko po ang aking sagot, ay ito po yung during the martial law years.
Did Mr. Montelibano have the authority to sign the lease agreement?
Ayon po sa affidavit ni Attorney Jake Lopez, and even in the Supreme Court case of the Ombudsman, siya nga po ang pinili ng grupo ni Mr. Benedicto. Kasi nga po siya na lang po naiiwan dito at the time, at alam naman po natin yung nangyari sa ibang pamilya ng Lopez po. So siya po ang pumirma at ito po ay pinag-usapan. Ngunit po hindi na finalize kung magkano ang dapat bayaran, yung rate po.
But in your statement, sinabi mo that a lease agreement was signed between the two.
Opo.
And at the same time, sabi mo ABS CBN was deprived of the right to use facilities.
Opo, dahil at that time wala na po sa kanila yung possession po. Kasi nga po, nung nasunog po yung KBS stations, pinakiusapan at ito nga po yung agreement na habang po nagpapagawa yung KBS Channel 9, RPN 9, kagamitin po muna pansamantala yung equipment at facilities ng ABS-CBN po. Ayon po dito sa June 8, 1973 letter lease agreement po.
Well, Mr. Chairman, with two conflicting sentences in his introduction, I don't think that there is any clarity in the declarations made today by the witness of ABS-CBN on whether there was vitiated consent. Kasi he's saying that there is vitiated consent without any evidence to prove that fact, Mr. Chairman. This is just a kwentong kutsero lang ang lumalabas dito, Mr. Chairman. Wala hong kabagay-bagay ang kanyang pag-testify sa bulwagang ito ngayong araw.
Paalala po sa ABS CBN, sana po ay bago po tayo dumako sa susunod na hearing, sana po yung mga ebidensya po para sa katanungan po na ibigay po ni Congressman Remulla ay madala po sa committee ito. Pwede ko po bang malaman sa ABS CBN kung kaya nyo pong madala yung mga official documents kung meron po tayo? ABS CBN?
Opo, dadalhin po namin yung mga dapat na mga dokumento po.
Maraming salamat po. Next to interpellate will be Congressman Edsel Lagman at ibinigay po ni Congressman Belmonte. Ang oras ni Congressman Belmonte kay Congressman Edsel Lagman, meron po siyang 10 minuto. Congressman Lagman, you're now recognized. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is alleged that the reacquisition by the Lopez family of ABS CBN without paying any consideration to the Republic of the Philippines is a violation of the Constitution. May we know what in particular is the provision of the Constitution purportedly violated?
Your Honor, yun nga po na tinake over yung facilities without paying rentals.
No. Panyero, could you please comprehend the question so that your answer will be responsive and we will not be wasting time? Let me repeat my question. It is alleged that the reacquisition by the Lopez family of ABS CBN without paying any compensation to the Republic of the Philippines violates the Constitution. Is there any provision which has been violated in the Constitution by the reacquisition of the Lopez family? Or there is none?
There was none, Your Honor.
None. Okay. Granting arguendo that the reacquisition is not legal, this would only result to a civil infraction. Is this correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Has there been any civil or even criminal action filed against the Lopez family for illegal reacquisition of ABS CBN?
To my knowledge po, wala pong final na kaso laban po sa mga officers or Lopez family po.
Considering that any violation regarding this reacquisition by the Lopez family of ABS CBN in 1986 is only civil in nature, after 34 long years, has prescription set in?
Hindi po nag-set in ang as far as the obligation, kung meron man po ang ABS-CBN, ay kung civil po ito, nag-prescribe na po.
Prescribed na. Under the civil code, what is the longest period of prescription for the institution of actions? Is it not 30 years with respect to the recovery of immovable properties?
That is correct po. For real properties po, 30 years prescription.
So that has long expired because from the EDSA People Power Revolution up to the present time, 34 years have already elapsed. Is that correct?
Totoo po yun, Your Honor.
In reality, who is the aggrieved party in the seizure of ABS CBN facilities in premises and its provincial TV and radio stations at the onset of martial law and later at the height of the 1986 EDSA revolution.
It was ABS CBN po that was prejudiced.
Okay. Is this violation of the rights of the Lopez family and ABS CBN violative of any provision of the Constitution?
The reacquisition po of
No.
family never violated any constitutional provision as far as the Lopez family is concerned.
No, I think the answer is not responsive. Could you kindly understand well the question before you reply, Atty. Rendon? My question is, you claim that the aggrieved party in the takeover of the ABS CBN properties and facilities at the outset of martial law and subsequently at the height of the EDSA People Power Revolution is ABS CBN. My question is,
That is correct. As the
constitutional provision is violated. Is this not the due process clause of the Constitution?
Opo, yung binanggit ko po kaninang dalawang nasa Bill of Rights po.
Yung Section 1 of Article 3 on the Bill of Rights, which says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law and the payment of just compensation to the aggrieved party. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
It is fundamental that an illegally seized or confiscated property must be returned to the rightful owner without delay. Is that correct?
There is a principle po na if you are a builder in bad faith, you do not even have to be compensated.
Let us not introduce alien concepts here. My question is very simple, Atty. Rendon. It is fundamental that an illegally seized or confiscated property must be returned to its rightful or legal owner without much delay. Do you agree to that?
Illegally seized po, ibig sabihin, that they have to be compensated po because ABS-CBN should be legally compensated because the takeover, as far as ABS-CBN is concerned, as the legal position, was not in accordance with law po.
Aside from compensation, is there need to return the property to the rightful owner under our laws? Is that correct?
There is a need to return to the rightful owner po.
The return to the Lopez family of ABS CBN is pursuant to this very fundamental tenet that the rightful owner should be given back a property illegally seized. Is that correct?
That is correct po, Your Honors.
After the EDSA People Power Revolution in 1986, was it incumbent on the new Cory administration to return ABS-CBN to the Lopez family as majority owners pursuant to this fundamental tenet?
Yes po, Your Honors.
It is admitted that at the onset of the martial law, government forces seized the facilities and premises of ABS-CBN at the then Bohol Avenue, including the provincial TV and radio station, as well as Channel 4, which was also being operated by ABS-CBN together with Channel 2. Is this correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
During the 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution, was the same properties of ABS CBN seized by the Cory and Enrile Ramos forces?
Yes, Your Honor, at the beginning, Your Honor.
But consequent to this takeover by the Cory and Enrile Ramos forces, ABS CBN issued a statement that it is authorizing the new government to use the said facilities during the crisis and emergency. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
When the situation normalized in April 1986, what did ABS-CBN do? Did it request for the return of the broadcast facilities, considering that the crisis and the emergency was already over?
Yes po, through a letter from Senator Tanyada as counsel of ABS-CBN po.
May we know whether ABS-CBN has submitted to the joint committees a copy of that letter from Senator Lorenzo Tanyada?
I am not sure, but I have a copy of that, Your Honor, because I was not the one who submitted the submissions from ABS-CBN. But if meron po, just kung meron, I cannot recall. But I also have here.
Could you please submit your copy of that letter from Senator Lorenzo Tanyada to President Cory Aquino way back in April 1986?
Your Honor, it was attached to the affidavit of Attorney Jake Almeida Lopez as an annex, yung April 17, 1986 demand letter ni Senator Tanyada po.
Okay.
It is now with the committee po.
Yes. So that answers my initial question that ABS-CBN has submitted a copy of this letter.
Yes po.
And in July 1986, was there any positive response from the Office of the President officially approving ABS-CBN's request to resume its broadcast operation? In other words, was that request granted by President Cory Aquino?
Yes po, gradually po sinosoli na po yung mga property ng ABS-CBN.
Now, there was an earlier question whether the approval of the request from Senator Tanyada on behalf of ABS-CBN was reduced to writing. And could you just recall what was your reply?
I was about to say, Your Honors, that the agreement to arbitrate is the answer of to the question that led to, or can be construed as a response by the Cory government para maging transparent po ang pagbalik ng possession ng ABS-CBN in answer to the demand letter of Senator Tanyada po.
The agreement to arbitrate came later. In the affidavit of Mr. Augusto Almeida Lopez, is the positive response or approval by the Office of the President then mentioned or annexed to this affidavit?
These were all attached also as an annex to the affidavit of Attorney Almeida Lopez, yung mga agreement to arbitrate po.
In other words, the timeline and sequence of events had been detailed in that affidavit of Mr. Augusto Almeida Lopez. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
Now, after the operation of ABS CBN was returned to the Lopez family, may we know whether it was able to secure a provisional authority to operate, more particularly Channel 2 and radio stations DCMM AM and DCRR FM?
Meron po, as a matter of fact, in the submissions to these honorable committees, meron pong approval yung NTC, National Telecommunications Commission po.
I recall that the Cory and Ramos and Relief Forces took over ABS CBN at the height of the People Power Revolution. Do you know whether there was any action taken by PCGG on this matter, considering that the takeover was subsequently legalized as a sequestration by the PCGG?
I do not have personal knowledge of that, Your Honor. I'm sorry.
Of course, I am not requesting for any personal knowledge, but on record, is there any record that on June 18, 1986, PCGG approved the return of Channel 2 to ABS CBN? If you are not ready to answer that question, can we ask the responsible officials of ABS CBN if they could submit to the committee that PCGG approval on the return of Channel 2 to ABS CBN on June 18, 1986? Mr. Chairman. After this, what happened next?
After the gradual return po of the facilities, after the Supreme Court decided the Gascon case, the arbitration proceedings proceeded again.
Now, let me just put this in proper time perspective. There was a need to agree to arbitration because despite the repeated demands of ABS CBN for PTB4 to vacate the premises of ABS CBN, they refused and instead assigned to ABS CBN a small portion of about 1/6 of the broadcast center for its television and radio operations. So there was need to resolve this problem. Consequently, there was this agreement to arbitrate. Is that correct?
That is correct po.
Congressman Lagman?
Yes.
Yes, you have 1 more minute, so...
Mr.
please-
Chair, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Congressman.
so that Congressman Lagman can continue with his interpellations. Earlier, meron hong binigay na oras ng mga authors. We can allow Congressman Lagman to partake or take some of those.
Actually, Congressman Zarate, included na po yung oras na inallocate natin sa kanya.
So,
Mr. Chair, I have my original 5 minutes. The Honorable
Congressman Lagman, you may continue.
on October 6, 1987, the Office of the President, on behalf of the Republic, agreed to submit to arbitration the dispute regarding the return of the entire broadcast center and the radio and television stations then occupied and operated by PTB4. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
Then subsequently, the validity of the arbitration agreement was questioned before the Supreme Court. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor, in the Gascon case.
This is the Gascon versus Jocor Arroyo, GR number 78389, October 16, 1989. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
Then in an in-bank decision by the Supreme Court validated or held that the agreement to arbitrate was valid, and consequently, the arbitration continued. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And subsequently, there was an arbitral decision or award. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
And among the salient dispositions, or even the principal disposition in the arbitral award or decision, is that ABS CBN was awarded the total amount of 97,880,000 as rentals in arrears of PTB4, which the government obligated itself to pay in non-cash basis, like tax credit. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
In other words, the bottom line is, instead of ABS CBN, the aggrieved party, paying any compensation to the Republic, it was the Republic which obligated itself to pay ABS CBN. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
In sum, the reacquisition of ABS CBN was covered by legitimate issuances like the following: letter of the Office of the President effecting the reacquisition as requested by Senator Tanyada; 2, order of the Presidential Committee on Good Government releasing the assets of ABS CBN under sequestration; 3, grant of provision authority to ABS CBN to resume operations by the National Telecommunications Commission; 4, agreement to enter into arbitration; 5, Supreme Court decision in Gascon versus Arroyo upholding the validity of the agreement to arbitrate; and finally, the rendition of the arbitral award. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
May we know, Attorney Rendon, whether any of these issuances have been challenged then or up to now?
None, Your Honors.
Honorable Joint Chairman, may I request that these issuances, being official actions, be given judicial notice, so to speak, or be recognized by these joint committees?
The said documents requested by Congressman Lagman, the committee is therefore ordered to provide all of this as requested. Yes, you may proceed.
In 1995, Republic Act number 7966, entitled, and I quote, an act granting the ABS CBN Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain television and radio broadcasting stations in the Philippines and for other purposes was enacted. Is this correct?
That is contained, Your Honor, in the order of the NTC, Your Honor. Yes.
So, so there was this franchise granted in 1995 under Republic Act 7966. Do you confirm that?
Yes, Your Honor, under that Republic Act.
Now, the enactment of Republic Act number 7964 has put to rest any challenge to the reacquisition by the Lopez family of ABS CBN. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
Mr. Chairman, Joint Chairman, thank you very much for this opportunity to make this interpellation.
Thank you so much, Congressman Lagman. Next to interpolate, Congressman Bordado. Congressman Bordado, you have the floor.
Let me just give my brief. Okay, thank you. Let me just give my brief manifestation on the issue of whether or not the acquisition of ABS CBN by the Lopez family after EDSA revolution was pursuant to the Constitution. We must be guided by the words of our Constitution. It is imperative that we look at the constitutional guarantees on private property enshrined in our Bill of Rights. All our three constitutions, the 1935, the 1973, and the 1987 constitutions contain exactly the same provisions in the Bill of Rights protecting property rights. All three constitutions guarantee that no person shall be deprived of property without due process of law. All three constitutions guarantee that private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. Excuse me. Even at the time of martial law, the wordings of our Constitution on the guarantee of protection to private property had not changed. In raising this issue on the return of assets to ABS CBN, is the government claiming a right over the assets returned to ABS CBN? By what right does the government claim ownership rights over these assets? Was it through the sequestration order of then President Ferdinand Marcos, through letter of instruction -A? While there was a seizure of private property or assets, there was no transfer of ownership from the private entity to the government. While the seized assets cannot be used, transferred, or conveyed for purposes inimical to national security, they can still be used, transferred, or conveyed so long as such use, transfer, or conveyance is not inimical to national security. While sequestration includes taking over and assumption of the management, control, and operation of the assets seized, the government did not take over and assume the management, control, and operation of the assets. Instead, the government allowed the assets of ABS CBN to be used by Radio Philippines Network, or the RPN, which was mentioned a while ago. Did such use by RPN of the assets of ABS CBN Corporation transfer ownership over those assets? Is there any private entity claiming a right of ownership over the assets reacquired by ABS CBN? The decision of the Supreme Court in ABS CBN Corporation versus the Office of the Ombudsman is instructive on this matter. By recognizing the letter agreement between the ABS CBN and RPN, the Supreme Court decision recognizes ABS CBN's corporation's ownership of the sequestered assets. Without any contrary court decision, Congress is bound to respect this pronouncement of the Supreme Court. In raising the issue of constitutionality of the reacquisition of ABS CBN of the sequestered assets, the oppositors to the franchise application are actually questioning the act of then President Corazon Ojanco Aquino of returning the assets of ABS CBN. Without a court ruling that such act of then President Aquino is unconstitutional, this committee or committees and even Congress cannot declare the same act as unconstitutional. Since there is no action filed in court questioning the act, this is presumed to be valid. Congress cannot pass upon the constitutionality of those acts in this proceeding, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman Bordado. Next, the chair would like to recognize Congressman Caloy Zarate.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. I certainly agree with the manifestation of the Honorable Bordado na di ko rin maintindihan kung bakit naging question kung constitutional nga ba ang pagbalik ng mga ari-arian ng ABS CBN sa kanila pagkatapos ng EDSA Revolution. Malinaw, Mr. Chair, sa mga inihayag dito ngayon at hindi naman kinokontest ito kahit ng mga ibang kasamahan natin na tinake over ng rehimen ni Marcos nung magdeklara ito ng batas militar by letter of instruction number 1, tinake over niya ang mga ari-arian ng ABS CBN. At hindi natin sabihin ito, pwedeng sabihin na simpleng take over lang ito dahil batas militar nga. May due rest talaga yun. And in fact, pagkatapos na tinake over ng diktador na si Marcos ang mga ari-arian ng ABS-CBN, hinuli pa nga, no? Hinuli ang kanilang chief executive noon na si Mr. Lopez at nakakulong siya for 4 years and 10 months, no? Nung mahuli siya November 27, 1972. Pagkatapos nung ma-take over itong mga properties ng ABS-CBN, ginamit ito ng mga crony ni Marcos. In fact, nagkaroon na lang ng isang istasyon at that time, ang Pilipinas. So, then EDSA Revolution happened. No? At during the revolutionary period, when the Korea administration then was exercising executive, legislative powers. No? Dito lumabas yung nabanggit kanina na sumulat ang dating lawyer ng ABS-CBN, si dating Senador Tanyada. Before that, sinabi nila gamitin niyo muna yung properties ng ABS-CBN dahil nasa emergency pa naman. Then on April of that year, 1986, sumulat si Senator Tanyada at sinabi na nga doon na kung tapos na ang emergency ay April 17, 1986, nababawiin na, no, ng ABS-CBN ang kanilang mga ari-arian na kinuha nung panahon ni Marcos, no, under letter of instruction number 1. Then after that, pinayagan na ang ABS-CBN, no, na bumalik sa ere. May approval ito ng PCGG at in fact noong ang NTC nung mag-operate na sila ng ang ABS-CBN ng kanilang radio station and TV station, July of 86 bumalik na ang radio ng ABS-CBN and September of 1986 bumalik na yung TV. Binigyan ito ng provisional authority ng NTC. We have to remember, at that time, nasa revolutionary, isang revolutionary government pa rin ng Aquino administration. Ito na yung gobyerno noon. No? Wala na yung gobyerno ng diktador na si Marcos. So as a result of that letter, nung ni Senator Tanyada, eventually nagkaroon ng pag-uusap, no? Ang mga kinatawan ng ABS-CBN at ang gobyerno ng Pilipinas. So ito na yung agreement to arbitrate dated January 6 of 1987. Is that correct?
Totoo po yun. Yun yung una po.
So na-establish po natin yun, no? Ang gobyerno ng Korea administration, no, dahil yun na nga ang bagong gobyerno, sumulat kayo na ibalik na yung inyong mga ari-arian. Hindi naman sinabi ng gobyerno, hindi namin ibabalik yan dahil sa gobyerno na yan. Wala hong sinabi ang gobyerno at that time na kanila yung mga ari-arian na yon. Tama po ba yun?
Tama po yun, Your Honors.
Yes. Wala hong sinabi. Katunayan, sinabi ninyo nga na pinayagan ng bumalik sa area ang ABS CBN, no? At nandito ito sa sulat o affidavit ni Attorney Almeda na in September of 1986 bumalik na nga sa area ang TV, and in July of 87, January of 87 ay nag-arbitrate na kayo. So, dito sa arbitration na ito, hindi po ba ito ay pagrekognisa ng gobyerno ng Pilipinas at that time, no? Nasa administrasyon ng Aquino, pagrekognisa ito na ang mga ari-arian na inaangkin ninyo ay talaga namang hindi nawala sa ABS CBN. Ang pagmamayari nito. Tama po ba yun?
Tama po yun, Your Honors.
At kahit na doon sa letters of instruction number 1, ang sinabi naman doon, tinake over lang, kinontrol. Di po ba yun yung lingwahe noon? Tama po ba yun?
Tama po yun, yung sequestration.
Okay. So, at nabanggit nyo rin kanina, sa hinaba-haba ng panahon ng mga arbitration, at dumating pa ito sa Korte Suprema, eventually yung desisyon ng Arbitration Board na nirekognisa yung karapatan ng ABS-CBN at karapatan ng ABS-CBN na makatanggap ng danyos sa pamamagitan ng pagbabayad ng renta, no, between March of 1986 up to 1992 ay pinayagan din ng Korte. Tama po ba yun?
Totoo po yun, Your Honors.
And yung arbitration agreement na yan na niratipika ng Korte ay hindi naman po kinontest ng kahit sino man sa pamahalaan.
Wala pong nag-contest. In fact, natalo pa nga po yung si Attorney Gascon at the time.
Yeah, yes. There was this petition filed by Attorney Gascon. And yung arbitration agreement na yan na kung saan ay narekognisa nga, no, yung karapatan ng ABS-CBN, yung pagmamayari niya sa kaniyang mga properties, no, yung karapatan niyang tumanggap ng renta, ay matagal nang naging final and executory yung arbitration agreement na yan. Tama po ba yun?
Totoo po yun, Your Honors.
Yes. And nabanggit nyo rin kanina, nung tinake over ba, no, if you have a personal knowledge of this based on documents and records that you reviewed, nung tinake over ba ito ng diktador na si Marcos, no, ang ari-arian ng ABS-CBN, pagdeklara niya ng batas militar, ang prangkisa ba ng ABS-CBN noon ay wala na? No, Marcos time. Marcos time.
Congressman Sarate, while they are reconciling their notes, Congresswoman Castro has allotted her 5 minutes to your additional time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Thank you, Your Honor. Based on the records, in 1974, as a result of the declaration of martial law, PD 576-A was issued, which terminated all congressional franchise by December 31, 1981.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the answer of Attorney Poblador. So, at the time, it was taken over by
May I just ask the resource person to say it again? Dahil parang mahina yung volume nung mic. Pakiulit lang yung baka hindi narinig ng mga kasamahan natin na naka-Zoom.
Yes, Your Honor. The presidential decree is PD 576-A, 1974. 1974.
So that presidential decree was issued in 1974. The properties of ABS-CBN were taken over in 1972. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes, Your Honor, in
So, at that-
1972.
In fact, at that time, buhay pa yung prangkisa ng ABS CBN. Is that correct, Panyero?
That should be the case.
Yes. So, from 1974 onwards, dahil kinansila nga nung presidential decree na yan, yung prangkisa ng ABS CBN, lahat wala nang prangkisa, lahat ng mga broadcast industry, hanggang nangyari yung EDSA revolution. So nagkaroon lang ng prangkisa uli ang ABS-CBN, as you mentioned kanina, you admitted, in 1995, as also mentioned in the interpellation of Attorney Lagman. Tama po ba yun, Attorney Rendon?
Tama po yun.
Okay, thank you. Again, nung binigyan kayo ng prangkisa in 1995, wala namang for example, ang Solicitor General's Office or the Department of Justice or the PCGG ay hindi naman nila tinutulan ito for whatever reason. Is that correct?
Your Honor, the 1995 franchise was actually a congressional franchise.
Yes, but in the deliberation for the issuance of that congressional franchise in 1995, my question was, ito ba ay tinutulan ng kahit sino mang partido, especially from the government, the PCGG, the DOJ, or the Solicitor General's Office, citing that you don't own these properties, so hindi kayo dapat bigyan ng prangkisa. Meron bang ganon in 1995? I suppose wala dahil nabigyan kayo ng prangkisa. Tama po ba yun?
We have no knowledge or recollection of that event, Your Honor.
At any rate, Mr. Chair, just to wind up. Again, ang usapin kasi rito, constitutional ba yung pagbalik sa kanilang mga ari-arian pagkatapos na ito ay tinake over, kinontrol ng panahon ng diktador na si Marcos. At ngayon nga ay naibalik na sa kanilang kamay. To this representation, Mr. Chair, ay wala hong question yun. Na tama lamang na ibalik sa kanila. Para itong sitwasyon na ikaw na nga yung ninakawan, dapat ibalik sa iyo yung ninakaw sa iyo. I think naaayon sa ating batas yan, natural man or moral na batas, or batas na sa ating konstitusyon. Kasi mahirap naman ho, Mr. Chair, na ikaw na nga ang ninakawan, ikaw pa rin ang pagbabayarin pag naibalik sa iyo yung ninakaw sa iyo. Hindi ho siguro nararapat yan at walang hustisya dyan. Kaya hindi question bakit nung ibanalik sa kanila ang kanilang ari-arian ay nagkaroon ng arbitration, nagkaroon ng award na magbayad ng danyos. Yung pamahalaan at that time through tax credits, kung tama yung pagkakaintindi ko, at iba pang non-cash na usapin. That's a recognition to this representation that indeed na-recognize ng pamahalaan noon. At dapat i-recognize up to now ang mga ganitong pangyayari na tama yung pagkabalik ng mga properties ng ABS CBN sa kanila at yung pagbalik nila sa ere. At walang question, dahil dumaan ito sa mga proseso na ayon na rin sa ating mga alituntunin at ayon sa batas. Even during the time that ang ating bansa ay nasa isang revolutionaryong period, during the time after the EDSA Revolution and just before the 1987 Constitution was ratified. Sumulat sila, hindi naman ito arbitrary, balik na yan sa inyo. Wala hong ganun. As sa nakita natin dito ngayon na merong sinunod na proseso. At yung proseso na ito, eventually, nagresulta doon sa pag-award ng, there was this arbitral award in favor of ABS-CBN. So maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po sa ating mga resource persons sa paglilinaw sa mga issues na ito.
Thank you very much, Congressman Sirate.
Maraming salamat, Congressman Zarate. Ang next po na mag-interpellate ay si Congressman Rufus Rodriguez. na kung saan binigyan din siya ng oras ni Congressman Carbin, Congresswoman Arenas, at Congresswoman Tambunting. Congressman Rufus, you have 20 minutes po.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I proceed, I have a preliminary inquiry to the committee and to the chairs. The first issue this afternoon is regarding the validity, the legality, constitutionality of the return of the ABS CBN properties to the Lopez family. May we know whether the oppositors to this franchise or the committee motu proprio can cite the specific constitutional provision violated by the return of the ABS CBN to the family, to the Lopez family?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Vice Chairman.
Thank you. Just to clarify as to the point raised by the Honorable Rodriguez, I don't think that there was any issue on the constitutionality of the return. It was just an issue raised by one of our colleagues as to the history of the return. But as to a violation of the provision of the Constitution, it was never raised, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Rodriguez.
Thank you very much. So therefore, in these proceedings this afternoon, there is no issue whatsoever of the alleged constitutionality of the return of the properties of ABS CBN to the Lopez family. Now, I'd like to ask the oppositors and also the committee, is there a statute, a law, a presidential decree, or any statute in our country which is being cited by the oppositors in this committee that the return is illegal because of a violation of a certain statute and the sections of the statute? May we know, Mr. Chairman?
Congressman Rodriguez, Congressman Barsaga would like to be recognized.
Okay.
Congressman Barsaga.
I'll just make a very short manifestation after my good friend, Congressman Rufus Rodriguez, has already completed his interpellation.
Congressman Rodriguez may continue.
So, Mr. Chairman, it is clear that this committee is hearing an issue which has no constitutional point or any illegality of statute. And so are we saying, Mr. Chairman, that this is a matter of discussion, academic discussions on propriety and morality of the transfer, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, on the Honorable Rodriguez, may we again clarify who are, as to whom your question being directed to?
The committee has set this hearing for this afternoon. And in the case of the Gabi Lopez citizenship, it is as Article 4 of the Constitution in 1935. In the case of the PDRs, Section 11, Paragraph 1 of Article 16. Now this one, how can we discuss matters here in the committee when there is no violation of any constitution, provision, or any statute of our country? So maybe we know. How come this is an issue when there is no allegations or positions of anyone that there is a violation of this return of the properties of ABS CBN to the Lopez family? That is a preliminary issue that we have to find out.
I agree with the Honorable Rodriguez, Mr. Chairman. This was in fact supposed to be the first part of the discussion, to discuss the history of the return of ABS CBN. And I think it was not an allegation whatsoever, Mr. Chairman, but it may best be answered by the Honorable Alvarez, the chairman of the legislative franchises. Because if you recall, Mr. Chairman, this was supposed to be the first part of the discussion, but when Mr. Gabi Lopez was present during our first hearing, I made a motion. In fact, I was the one who made the motion to go into the subject of the citizenship of Mr. Lopez, since we have already requested him and he was already there during our session. So, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make a
Bersaga.
very short manifestation
You may proceed.
in response to the query of Congressman Rufus Rodriguez. Well, under the Constitution, we have the so-called Equal Protection Clause. Under the Equal Protection Clause, all persons similarly situated shall be treated alike. And the violation of the Equal Protection Clause, insofar as our discussion is concerned, because there are so many victims of martial law. Unfortunately, they were not equally treated. Preference was given immediately to ABS CBN Corporation because right immediately after the EDSA revolution, they were able to get their properties, and at the same time, the government was able to pay them 97 millions. Pero maraming naghirap noong panahon ng martial law, maraming biktima. But those victims, up to now, not all of them had been properly compensated. Presidential Commission on Good Government was created 3 days after the EDSA revolution. Unfortunately, up to the present, pagkalipas ng napakaraming taon, more than 34 years, hindi pa rin natatapos ang PCGG. Kaya yun ang sinasabi. There is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. Persons similarly situated should be treated alike. And under the Equal Protection Clause, guaranteed under our Constitution, there should be no preferential treatment to any person. But as what we have been discussing right now, preference was given to the Lopez family as compared to the other victims of martial law. So there is a constitutional issue concerned, not only, and also to mention that oligarchy is prohibited is not encouraged under the present Constitution. So yung constitutional issue, Equal Protection Clause. Persons similarly situated should be treated alike. Unfortunately, there was no equal protection or the same treatment insofar as ABS is concerned as compared to the other victims of martial law.
Thank you very much, Congressman Bersaga. Congressman Rodriguez, to the benefit of the other members of this committee, we will proceed with the agenda for today. So you may continue with your interpolation. It is now your time.
Yes, just a short rejoinder. Well, the equal protection of the laws is there, but in the case, is it therefore the fault of ABS CBN and the Lopez family to assert their rights, while others may not have done so? In other words, after the removal of the Marcos regime, the Lopez family immediately, knowing the rights that were trampled upon, that were violated, this is really the article in the Bill of Rights, or no one should be deprived of life, liberty, or property. So therefore, others similarly situated could have also, if they were not returned the properties taken from them forcibly by the government, then they should have done so. So therefore, I believe that there is no issue even on equal protection of the laws. The Lopezes were vigilant and they were able to ask for the return. They got the return. There was an arbitration, and then therefore it was able to be clear at this point. It is also quite already an issue already quite finished. In other words, Mr. Chairman, the issue of because nobody can point about illegality statute and the equal protection does not apply here because it is the Lopez family which were deprived of property with a due process of law on, and that when the public emergency was there, yes, government can take private property, but always following that right is to be paid just compensation, and it was not paid just compensation. So let's now go to this to the matter at hand. I believe that this issue on the propriety of the transfer of the ABS CBN properties back to the Lopezes is beating a dead horse, because here the issue has already been previously settled, and the conclusion has been reached, final conclusion. And why do I say that? Because, Mr. Chairman, this has been decided on a quasi-judicial body akin to a court, and this was the Board of Arbitrators. They recognized the ownership of ABS CBN, and the Board of Arbitrators decided that rental should be paid to the owners. So, Board of Arbitrators, first in the hierarchy. Second, this was questioned and it went to the RTC, the Regional Trial Court, and the Regional Trial Court decided that this compromise agreement acknowledging the ownership of the Lopez family of ABS CBN also entitles them to the rentals, and therefore the compromise agreement that was approved in the Board of Arbitrators was approved by the judicial process in the Regional Trial Court. So therefore, this is already res judicata, meaning that the matter has been adjudicated by a competent court. This is the Board of Arbitrators and the Regional Trial Court, and therefore it should not be pursued any further. Okay, that is on the side of res judicata. Now, we go now to the executive department. So the judicial department is there. In fact, in the case of Gascon versus Arroyo, the case of Gascon, there were two parts of the decision. One, there's no standing of Mr. Chito Gascon to file the case, so dismissible at that point. The second one is that on the merits, the Supreme Court ruled even if there's no standing for Mr. Gascon, because the Supreme Court said when the agreement to arbitrate, this is between Joker Arroyo and ABS CBN, it said in Gascon versus Arroyo, GR number 78389, October 16, 1989, after stating there's no standing in court of the petitioners, here it says when the agreement to arbitrate was signed by Executive Secretary Joker Arroyo, the President exercised both legislative powers and executive powers of the government. Cabinet members are the assistants and agents of the Chief Executive. Where government takes private property, and this is where it's very important, because this is what gives the right to the Lopez family to get back what they own. When government takes private property for public use without legal process of expropriation or negotiated sale, the private property may be properly, the private owners may maintain a suit against the government, and there's no violation of the government immunity without its consent, because the same cannot be used as an instrument for perpetrating an injustice to a citizen. And so therefore, from the Board of Arbitrators to the Regional Trial Court to the case of Gascon, it is very clear that the matter of the return of the ABS CBN broadcasting to the Lopez family is res judicata. It has been decided already by the courts. And so we go now to the other principles in law on the executive. Now, according to the case of ABS CBN Broadcasting Corporation versus Office of the Ombudsman, 5569 SCRA 59, October 2008, it was stated here that it is a fact, as stated in the decision of the Supreme Court, it is a fact that in June 1986, says here, the President, Professor Aquino, acting on the request of ABS CBN through Senator Tañada, returned the ABS CBN, these radio stations and TV stations, on a gradual and scheduled basis. It was also stated here in relation to the fact that the PCGG, it was mentioned earlier that the PCGG was the first creation by executive order of the President, creating the PCGG. And in this case of Gascon versus Arroyo, it stated that on June 18, 1986, this is the records of the case, facts of the case. stated in the Supreme Court, the PCGG approves the return of Channel 2 to the Lopez family. Two Supreme Court decisions that have therefore stated this. And so, in the administrative level, in the executive department, it is clear that the PCGG has returned these particular properties to the Lopez family, and the PCGG, under the qualified agency principle, represents the president, because the PCGG is the creation of the president. It's as if it's the president who has given back the properties back to the Lopez family. So that's one. The PCGG, the administrative agency, has already ruled and to return it. Second, also in July of 1986, a provisional authority was issued by the National Telecommunications Commission. This is the primary agency with the primary jurisdiction to be able to allow a broadcast station to operate and to be able to give the services. And very clearly in 1986, the NTC issued a provisional authority to operate television stations, Channel 2 and radio stations DZMM and DZRR. So we have now two agencies. And of course, the president being head of the NTC, being the one overall, as the president has supervision and control over the NTC and the PCGG, is also bound by her agents, unless the president would be able to cancel these decisions. They are impliedly the acts of the president, and that is the rule on the doctrine of primary jurisdiction that was given to the agencies. Therefore, in the judicial process, it is res judicata. In the case of the executive, all the executive agencies that has primary jurisdiction has ruled in favor of ABS CBN. So now let me go to the questions to our legal counsel, Attorney Rendor. May I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
You may proceed, Congressman Rodriguez.
Thank you. As mentioned earlier, in April 17, 1986, is it correct, Attorney Rendor, that the Lopez family, through former Senator Lorenzo Tañada, counsel for the Lopez family, requested the return of ABS CBN to the Lopez family? Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
Yes. And then, because of this request, there was therefore the action of the president to allow his executive secretary, Joker Arroyo, to enter into an arbitration agreement. Was there an arbitration agreement that was signed between Joker Arroyo and the ABS CBN in relation to the letter of the ABS CBN for the president to return ABS CBN?
There was, Your Honors.
Thank you. And the arbitration could not proceed because Mr. Chito Gascon filed a case in the Supreme Court. And this became the case of Gascon versus Arroyo. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
And in Gascon versus Arroyo, it was declared that Mr. Chito Gascon has no standing to question this because he will not be affected by any ruling that will come here, and he is not in any way damaged by this agreement. It was also ruled that precisely the acts of Joker Arroyo in signing as executive secretary this agreement to arbitrate is legal under the qualified agency doctrine. Is that correct, Attorney Rendor?
That is correct, Your Honors.
Thank you. Then, therefore, we go now to 1993. Before that, when was the second agreement to arbitrate? When did the arbitration, the second one, take into effect?
There was another agreement to arbitrate in 1993, Your Honors.
Correct. And in this agreement of November 13, 1993, there was agreement to submit to arbitration to the Board of Arbitrators between the Republic of the Philippines and ABS CBN Corporation to resolve first the ownership, the return, and secondly the claims for rental and damages. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
And on May 23, 1995, after these judicious proceedings of receiving evidences, on May 23, 1995, the Board of Arbitrators, headed by our revered former Justice Amarfina Herrera, we therefore had this compromise agreement. Can you tell us what this this compromise agreement approved by the Board of Arbitrators in this particular case contain? Just the salient points of this second Board of Arbitrators of the Republic of the Philippines and the Lopez family.
That was the award of the arbitral board, Your Honors.
That's correct. And the arbitral board recognized the ownership of the Lopez family and ordered the payment of 97,500,000 on a non-cash basis in payment of all the claims of ABS CBN against the Republic. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
So the Board of Arbitrators decided that the ownership has been returned, is owned, these properties are owned by ABS CBN, and therefore, as a corollary decision, then since they were deprived of the rentals, there was no rentals or payment paid as owner, the 97,500,000 was ruled in favor of the Lopez family, ABS CBN, correct?
That is correct, Your Honor, in accordance with the arbitral award.
That's correct. And then this arbitral award was brought to the Regional Trial Court for its approval. And is it correct that on June 23, 1995, the Regional Trial Court approved this compromise agreement recognizing the ownership of ABS CBN and also ruling to give 97,500,000 to the ABS CBN by the Republic?
That is correct, Your Honor, in accordance with the arbitration law, RA 76.
So therefore, clearly, the judicial process was met by the ABS CBN and the government, and they were approved by the Board of Arbitrators and then also by the Regional Trial Court. Was the Regional Trial Court order or decision approving the compromise agreement, was it challenged in a higher court?
None, Your Honor, even until this date, Your Honors.
Up to this date, there has been no question, no challenge to the Regional Trial Court decision of June 23, 1995, and therefore, this is now the law of the case, correct? It is stare decisis on this particular point, is the law of the case, that certainly ABS CBN is the rightful owner of the property and that the payment of 97,500,000 is correctly adjudged to ABS CBN to be paid by the Republic of the Philippines. Now we go now to the case of ABS CBN Broadcasting Corporation versus Office of the Ombudsman. Now in this case, you know, because the Lopez family filed this case against Roberto Benedicto et al. For the reason that precisely there were deeds, it was based on the revised penal code. And there were 5 counts of criminal cases. And the first count is that the execution of deeds, the Lopezes were forced by means of violence or intimidation. That's number 1. You confirm also that the other reasons why there was a case against Roberto Benedicto was because there was usurpation of real rights in property committed by Benedicto against the Lopez family. Do you confirm that?
I'm sorry, I did not quite understand the last portion of the question.
Yeah, the cases are 1, execution of deeds the Lopez family is charging Benedicto for an execution of deeds, which in the revised penal code, if you force a person to write a deed or an agreement by means of violence or intimidation, that is a violation of the revised penal code. And number two, there is also the revised penal code provisions for usurpation of real rights and property. In other words, Benedicto usurped the rights of the Lopezes in the properties mentioned. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
And of course, as you have mentioned earlier, there were also counts of robbery and theft, correct?
I did not get the last portion again, Your Honor.
Robbery, theft, and estafa, because lima yun eh. There was also allegation of theft under the revised penal code, and then robbery, and also estafa. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors. The three
Yes.
felonies.
Yes. And the only reason why the case was dismissed as far as the Benedictus was because he died together with Mr. Salvador Tan, correct? He died. And therefore, as any law student would know, when there is a criminal case, you cannot proceed criminally if the accused is dead. Is that correct?
That is the ruling of the Ombudsman as sustained by the Supreme Court that the death of Ambassador Benedicto does not survive the action
That's correct.
in the criminal case.
In this dispository portion, it really said that, it cannot survive and there is no grave abuse discretion of the ombudsman for dismissing because of the death. But then, clearly, in that case, it said that, and I quote now, the Supreme Court decision in this case of ABS versus Ombudsman, while a criminal case against Roberto Benedicto et al. Are dismissed, it is without prejudice to file civil actions against the estate. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
In other words, while the criminal case may not proceed, there can be civil actions. So now, Attorney Rendor, so clearly, we can see here that as found by the courts, the PCGG had returned the properties, the NTC had also issued provisional authority, and are you aware also of the second provisional authority that was issued by NTC on June 11, 2008, because the first one was after of course, 1986, when they were allowed in July after the, the removal of President Marcos. So they were given authority. And then on June 11, 2008, the NTC, once again, in an application for provisional authority to operate Channel 2, DZMM, and DWRR, can you tell us the ruling of the NTC on the application to grant a provisional authority to ABS CBN to operate these three broadcast and TV stations? June 11, 2008.
That is correct, Your Honor. In fact, that NTC decision quoted in toto the decision, the arbitral award, and even the judgment, I think, of the Regional Trial Court of Makati.
In other words, Attorney Rendor, the NTC in its decision cited what has already been res judicata in the courts by the Board of Arbitrators and also the RTC that really recognizes the ownership of ABS CBN. And are you aware that in this particular order of June 11, 2008, it says here that the NTC grants the provisional authority to operate Channel 2, DZMM, and DWRR because first, the applicant, that is ABS CBN, is legally, financially, and technically qualified. Is it not that in the body of the decision of the NTC?
That is correct, Your Honor, in the June 11, 2008 decision of the NTC, Your Honors.
Yes. That is the first phrase on that particular dispositive portion, and this is where it's very important because here, this appears also in the decision of the NTC, which has primary jurisdiction in granting broadcast media to operate. And here, would you confirm that this particular decision of the NTC states they're granting the provisional authority because there appears no pending case or proceeding before any agency, court or tribunal which puts in issue the ownership of ABS CBN of the equipment and facilities used by ABS CBN. Is that, can you confirm that that is coming from the decision of the NTC, the primary body which has primary jurisdiction on the operation of broadcast media?
That is correct, Your Honors.
In other words, under the principle of the doctrine of primary jurisdiction, the NTC has found that there is no issue on ownership of the ABS CBN over the equipment and facilities of Channel 2, DCMM, and DWR. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
And also, under the doctrine administrative law, the doctrine of qualified political agency, that both the PCGG, a commission created by the President, and also the NTC, which is under the office of the President, under the doctrine of qualified agency, the acts of these agencies bear an implied approval of the President. Ilusan Bayan versus Dominguez, 205 SCRA 92. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor, under the principle of qualified political agency, Your Honor.
And then also under another principle on regularity of performance of official duties, the actions of the PCGG in returning the properties, the action of the NTC in giving a provisional authority. The principle applies that public officers generally enjoy the presumption of regularity in the performance of official duty. And in this case, is this not, are their discharge of their functions that they enjoy the presumption of regularity of the functions of the NTC and PCGG?
That is correct, Your Honor, on the doctrine of presumption of regularity, Your Honor.
And my question now, has there been any challenge on the action of the PCGG returning the properties to ABS CBN?
There was no appeal or challenge to the return of ABS CBN through this arbitration agreement, Your Honor.
And has there been a challenge also of the NTC issuing the two provisional authorities in this case? In other words, was there a question of the regularity of their performance of their official duties?
None, Your Honors.
None. Up to this time, Counsel?
None, Your Honors.
Thank you. Also, very clearly in this particular case, in the case of here, can you also tell us, Pañero, the doctrine of operative fact? What is an operative fact doctrine in administrative law?
The doctrine of operative act, Your Honor, is that acts that were done prior to any challenge are deemed valid.
Exactly. Have you teach law, Mr. Rendon?
That
Have
is
you taught law?
in administrative law.
Yeah, that's right, because you know these provisions. So in this particular case, yes, the operative act that is pertaining today, as we have our hearing, is that there has been no question of these particular decisions of the NTC and the Board of Arbitrators, the PCGG, and anybody can depend on the existence of these executive acts. If there is no prior, there is still no determination of any court of law of its constitutionality and illegality. And therefore, the operative fact now is that these actions of the Office of the President, the PCGG, the Board of Arbitrators, and the NTC are operative acts that produce consequences that we in Congress should acknowledge and that cannot be erased ignored or disregarded. And so, Panyero, going back therefore to the issue, can you confirm that so far there has been no constitutional provision that can rightfully be invoked against the return of the ABS CBN property to the Lopez family?
There is no constitutional issue, Your Honor. In fact, the return is in consonance with the Constitution, Your Honor.
That's correct. In fact, if there's anybody to invoke the Constitution, it will be the Lopez family for being illegally deprived of their properties or if we grant arguendo that under a public emergency like martial law, there can be a takeover, there has to be, when there's takeover of private property for public use, there has to be just compensation. Before the Board of Arbitrators, had there been a just compensation for the use of the properties, the broadcast properties of ABS CBN by the government, especially during the time of President Marcos? Has there been a payment of just compensation?
Your Honor, from the time of, I did not quite get the last.
Did Marcos or his officials pay any compensation for the taking of the property of ABS CBN of the control?
During the martial law years, Your Honor, there was no compensation at all.
So meaning that the constitutional provision for the use of private property for public use with just compensation was not complied by the government at the time. Correct?
Yes, Your Honors.
In other words, if there's any constitutional right that has been violated here, it is the ABS CBN, which was grossly violated when the government took over ABS CBN, DZMM, and all the other radio stations of the Lopez family, correct?
That is correct, Your Honor. The Lopez family did not violate any constitutional provision as regards the takeover, Your Honors.
And then, therefore, justice dictates that the properties illegally controlled and taken over by government, once democracy is restored, should be restored democratically to the owners of the property. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
So therefore, in this particular case, there is no violation, Attorney Rendor, the violation of any constitutional provision. Do you agree with that?
There was none, Your Honor.
There is also no violation of any statute, any Republic Act, any Commonwealth Act, any presidential decree in the return of the properties of the Lopez family.
Nothing was violated by the ABS CBN, Your Honor.
So therefore, the return is legally and constitutionally valid. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honors.
Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I end my interpellation and I'd like to give my time to the next interpellator who will take up also the cudgels for the authors of the ABS CBN franchise. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, just a very short
Thank you very much,
request.
Congressman Rodriguez. Congressman Barsaga, yes, you're recognized.
Well, nasabi ng ABS-CBN, and in line also with the questioning of Congressman Rupus, and based also on my previous interpellation, I would be requesting ABS-CBN to present, if any, if there is a written order coming from the former President Cory Aquino for the return of ABS-CBN facilities to the Lopez family. Kung meron lamang.
If the document is available, ABS CBN, please provide the same document. Is that it, Congressman Barsaga?
Yes, at least I'm giving them time. Second, we shall be discussing the alleged violations of ABS CBN insofar as the taxes are concerned. And in order that we can be enlightened with the issue pertaining to taxes, I would request the financial statements of ABS CBN for the last 25 years.
Okay.
And also ABS CBN land holdings as early as 1999 up to the present, and all the subsidiary corporations of ABS CBN.
ABS CBN, you're instructed to provide this committee the documents as requested by Congressman Barsaga. Congressman Barsaga, is that it?
Well, I did not hear any confirmation coming from ABS CBN.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Thank you very much. At kung pwede sana, kung mag-hearing tayo ng Wednesday, kung maibigay na bukas ng umaga. para mabasa naman namin.
Chair, can we request for reasonable time to comply with the request? If, as you know, we received requests to comply with the requests of the committee on a Saturday afternoon po, no, for submission today on top of everything else. Baka naman po pwedeng pakiusapan lang na a reasonable time po.
So, just to clarify,
Congressman Barsaga.
what would be the reasonable time being asked by the ABS CBN people?
Yes. Actually, eventually, the committee will tackle the tax issue of ABS CBN. So maybe even before that time, the said documents can be provided to the committee, and we can provide the members of the committee the copies of the said document.
Yes,
Is that
Your Honor.
sufficient?
Opo.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair,
When, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman,
Kailan? Kasi ang binibigay lang naman sa amin, USB. Pagkatapos ipiprint pa namin, sobrang dami ng pages, at kung minsan nakakahiya naman, pagpunta namin dito, hindi naman nababasa namin yung mga dokumento na galing sa ABS-CBN.
Is within the week sufficient time for ABS CBN?
Your Honor, if I remember correctly po, ang napag-usapan po na rules is 3 days po before a hearing. I think the COMSEC will validate that po. So depende po kung kailan po yung hearing na naka-agenda po yung topic, we can work backwards po, Your Honor.
Yeah, but given the voluminous documents regarding this issue, I think the chair will rule that we be given more time to go through the said documents. So
I understand, Your Honor, but
possible
if you...
time that you can provide it within the week.
Yes,
the
Your Honor,
committee
we'll do
members
our...
can prepare.
Opo, we'll do our best po, pero kung ang sabi nga po nung ni Congressman voluminous po, kami po we're going to have to produce 20 copies of those voluminous copies din po as well. So yun lang naman po ang pakiusap po namin. Salamat po.
So okay rin lang sa amin USB. We shall do the printing.
Yes, Congressman Barsaga.
3 days. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Kaya na, Mr.
Sige po.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Your Honor.
USB will do more than enough. Maraming salamat.
Mr. Chair.
Just out of curiosity, ABS-CBN, no? We're talking about the return of ABS-CBN to the Lopez family. Were there any other companies that was returned to the Lopez family after martial law?
We have no knowledge of that, Your Honors.
So
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, please.
just manifestation, yes, Congressman Marcoleta, because we have Congressman Law Fortune next on our list of interpolations. So
Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Chair.
I will only
because
allow a manifestation, Congressman Marcoleta.
It's not a manifestation, it's just an inquiry because reasonable time is relative. I think the COMSEC of the two committees would recall that more than 3 weeks ago, I asked ABS CBN to submit ALPA files of the benefits submitted to the SSS, Pag-ibig Fund, PhilHealth, employment compensation, and so on and so forth.
Remember, Congressman Marcoleta, this was requested to them. Has ABS CBN complied with these requests?
Attorney Cherry, have we submitted?
Because those were given to Congressman Marcoleta, they complied today.
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 So considering that Congressman Balsaga is asking for so many voluminous
Documents.
documents, it might take them years. Number two, Mr. Chair, last week, or was it 3 days ago, I asked for stipulations during the PDR hearing. There were 3 stipulations, and the lawyer of the ABS CBN said they're going back to the records. Until today, Mr. Chair, I have not heard any of the lawyers of ABS CBN, if they can confirm the stipulations I asked them. I think that was two days ago, in regard to the hearing of the PDRs. Why is it that ABS CBN seems to be so taking everything so slowly? When in fact the request is very simple, Mr. Chair, only stipulations and the records will bear me. Ito yung medyo nakikita ko na dinidelay nila.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
not sure about their sincerity in attending this hearing, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, may I answer that question?
Yes, you may.
Yeah. I thought that the stipulations would be made orally, so I was prepared to make those stipulations orally. But if you would want to have it in writing,
It's
you
just a
could submit that
matter
tomorrow.
of saying yes or no. I was waiting. You said you'll have to check your records.
Yes, Your Honor.
Until today, I finished my interpellation. You have not made any effort to tell me that the stipulations are yes or no. Would you like me to repeat them?
Yeah, we could make those stipulations orally, Your Honor.
Mr. Chair, earlier I invited the stipulations on the PDR hearings. There are only 3. Number 1, as of August 16, 2019, per beneficial ownership disclosure of ABS CBN Holdings, Prudential Singapore Holdings, PTE Limited, holds 15,656,570 PDRs issued by ABS CBN Holdings beneficial ownership disclosure. This is in their ABS Holdings beneficial ownership disclosure, October 28, 2019. Securities and Exchange Commission Form 18-A. What is so hard in stipulating whether it is yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, because
Yes, you may.
Okay.
Attorney.
that report was not filed by us. It was
So it
filed
is
by...
yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Number 2, in May 2013, Mercury Media Holdings Limited, an affiliate of the Capital Group companies, acquired PDRs issued by ABS CBN Corporation from Marathon Asset Management LLP, costing some 2.5 billion. Would you stipulate that, attorney?
That we were not involved in that transaction, but we...
You were advised by CC Law on June 14, 2013.
Our basis for agreeing to that stipulation is the same.
So you would not like to stipulate on this?
Our basis also what...
But did you check your records? Because that was the commitment you made.
Yeah, we
Did you
don't
really
have
check
any.
the records?
Your Honor, we don't have that in our records. Because
You don't have the record.
we don't have the records of that transaction. But we can stipulate that based on the website of CCP Law, it says there that
Yes, it is.
was
So
acquired
you
with 2.3.
stipulate.
Yes,
Okay.
2.3 billion, I think, is amount.
Yeah, 2.3 billion. Okay. In June 2013, a US-based fund, Capital International Private Equity Fund, acting through Mercury Media Holdings Finance, subscribed to some 2.5 billion worth of PDRs of ABS CBN Holdings.
Yes, we can stipulate that, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you very much. So I would like to reiterate the position of this committee that all documents that were requested to the ABS CBN, you were given sufficient time in fact, in some of those documents, you even gave when the deadline would be upon submission. So with due respect to this said committee and the hearings of these proceedings, can you please furnish all requested documents as requested?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. May I just put on the record, though, that the Honorable Deputy Speaker's request for alpha lists, which we did receive, did not indicate a deadline po, which I think the COMSEC will also
Yes.
verify. No. So this is not because we're delaying or anything po. Dahil yung iba naman pong mga hiningi sa amin, may mga deadline, inuuna po namin yung mga may deadline po. Yun lang naman po.
Okay.
Salamat po.
But ito lang yung sa issue lang ni DS Marcoleta. I remember that was taken up, I think sometime a week or 2 weeks ago, and he mentioned the request of those documents already.
Yes, Your Honor. But together with those, again, the COMSEC will attest that we have received multiple requests naman po for other documents. So inuna lang po namin yung mga may deadline po. Salamat po.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chairman,
much.
as to your question, Mr. Chairman, as to what companies were returned after the EDSA revolution, there are in fact 4, if I'm not mistaken. It's Meralco, PCI Bank, First Philippine Holdings, and ABS CBN. ABS CBN can correct me, but that is the historical, the history of the returns of those companies, Mr. Chair.
Actually, that was the point of clarification I wanted to make, Vice Chairman Defensor, regarding the other interests of the Lopez Group after martial law. So anyway, we will proceed with the interpellations of our members. Next to interpellate,
Mr. Chair.
yes,
Yes, Mr. Chair,
Congresswoman
since we are in the 50-year franchise, Paano, na we are tackling that, may I manifest that I am giving my time to Congressman Lau Fortun for his interpellation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Arlene Rosas. So next to interpellate, with enough and sufficient time, Congressman Lau Fortun, you are now recognized.
So, 15 minutes yan. 15 minutes. Total.
Kay Lau, ilan?
Okay.
Can I start now, Mr. Chairman?
Total.
Congressman Lau Fortun, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, in the determination of this issue, the transfer of ABS CBN to the Lopez's after EDSA, it is very important to know and understand the events relative to the ownership and control of this network before the EDSA uprising and before the declaration of martial law and during martial law. Sino ba ang may-ari ng kumpanyang ito? Sino ba ang may-ari ng korporasyong ito bago ang batas militar? Paano ito napunta sa kamay ng gobyerno? At naibalik nga ba ng tama ito sa kamay ng dapat na nagmamay-ari nito? Unang tanong para sa ABS CBN, perhaps the Council of ABS CBN can answer this. Ano po ba itong ABS at CBN at MBS? How are these entities related to each other? And how are they related to the Lopez family?
May I know who will respond from the ABS CBN group? Anyone can, please.
Sorry, Your Honor, we don't have all the details of that, but from what I remember, the CBN was the Chronicle Broadcasting Network, which was originally owned, set up and owned by the Lopez family. Eventually, they acquired Alto Broadcasting System, or ABS, from the Quirino family and merged the two companies together to form ABS CBN.
How about MBS? Is this not also a sister company of ABS and CBN and also owned at least majority of the shares thereof by the Lopez family?
Montserrat.
You're requesting Congressman Fortun on the CBN side?
MBS, Your Honor.
MBS.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I have no personal knowledge of MBS.
And Mr. Chair, I'm going to proceed. Kailan po kauna-unahang nagkaroon ng prangkisa ang ABS CBN? At ano ang mga batas na pinangahawakan ng ABS CBN sa mga prangkisang ito?
'50 po, yung pinakaunang prangkisa ng ABS.
1950.
Apo.
Now, prior to September 21, 1972, no? Tagal-tagal na rin palang may prangkisang ABS-CBN kung 1950 pa ito nag-uumpisa. And let me ask, no, prior to September 21, 1972, did ABS and CBS own and operate television and radio stations? And if they did, how many and where were these located? Tapos kung saan sila located, were the lands on which these stations, as well as the transmitter towers, owned by ABS and CBN?
I'm going to apologize, Your Honor, Mr. Chair. No, this is almost 40 years ago. None of us were present during the time, but I think we have permission to bring in Attorney Jake Almeida Lopez, former President or General Manager of ABS CBN, on Wednesday, and I think he will be able to answer those questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Katibak. Actually, I was about to suggest that to the committees that Attorney Augusto Almeida Lopez be also invited, probably in the next hearing, because actually I am basing my questions on an affidavit executed by him, where he described in detail the history of ABS-CBN from the time it got its first franchise up to the time that it was taken over by the government during the declaration of martial law.
Yes,
anyway,
Fortune, Mr. Almeida is invited for the next questioning. However, during the discussion, the members agreed that they will just propound the questions, but if there are questions that need to be replied to by Mr. Almeida, then in the next hearing, he will be able to attend to answer some of your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If ABS-CBN would know, Mr. Chairman, any of their representatives, for your operation in Metro Manila, ABS-CBN is said to have established a broadcast center in Quezon City. Can you please, for the information and guidance of the two committees, narrate to us in detail the establishment of that center, its location, its facilities, its ownership and operations?
The question is the transfer to Broadcast City. Is that correct, Honorable Fortune?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, because they had established many facilities, not only in Metro Manila, but also in the provinces. I'm asking about the establishment of a broadcast center in Quezon City. And for the